My name's Bronia, and I work for Sage. I'm a field editor for Sage, but I was previously the commissioning editor for Sage Research Methods. Um, I'm imagining many of you know that Sage is a big publisher of the research methods. We consider our wheelhouse, our cornerstone of our publishing programs, be that our textbooks, journals, through into our digital products, so videos, cases, data sets. So this session today is all about the research methods, but it's also about students. And it's about how librarians can meet students where they are. So where is that student on their research journey, and how can you, as a librarian, support that research journey? So we're going to talk about some resources as we go through this presentation. And some of these resources are actually freely available resources, and I'm referring to Method Space, which is an online collaborative space sponsored by Sage, where researchers, faculty members, librarians, students can go to find out more about the research methods and read interesting and engaging blog articles and get links to different types of resources all about research methods and research methods journey. So we'll make some references to Method Space today, and we do have a handout here, and it's got the links to Method Space on it. So please do grab a handout if you are interested in that. Okay, so let's launch into today's session. We're going to be talking about the types of questions that students might come to you with and the types of answers that you might be able to give them as a librarian. And we're going to talk about how you as a librarian can assess where a student is at with their research journey and give them the appropriate advice and resource. So, what resource is this student ready for? What will actually help them? Is it something abstract? Is it something practical? Is it a how-to guide? Are they maybe more interested in theory? Is it a concept that they need more information about? Or is it some sort of application of that concept into a research journey? How do you assess all of that? So to explore these issues, really pleased to have Janet Salmons with us today. Janet is a prolific independent researcher, writer, instructor, and consultant. She's also the author of 3 Sage books, which are displayed along here. Excellent books, Doing Qualitative Research Online, Qualitative Online Interviews, and Cases in Online Interview Research. But that is only one part of Janet's prolific output. She's also published numerous chapters and articles, and most recently she has been working as our Method Space guru, and she's devising a really engaging series of posts and user guides for our Sage Research Methods open house. And what our open house is a free access period to all of the Sage Research Methods resources. And you can get access to that through Method Space. And Janet will be writing a series of posts that talk about how a researcher might want to use Sage Research Methods and guiding them through the content. And this session today will also feed into that session on Method Space, so you'll be able to read more about it if you're interested. So Janet has spent 20 years guiding students in professional and doctoral research, and we're really pleased to have her here today to share her insights. So over to you, Janet.
Probably something, hopefully, that is stuck in your mind from your college days that comes up, on a particular occasion, and think, now I know why they emphasize that. So one of those that kind of came to my mind when I was thinking about this presentation was this idea of building a cognitive bridge, that meaningful learning happens when we are able to bridge from where the student is now to where it is they need to go. And then it's not only about, say, starting at the point that they have or think they are, but really anchoring with what they already know. So how can you link to something someone already knows and build from there? So, for example, if I know how to make an omelet, it might be easier to teach me how to make a souffle than if I have never, made anything at all. So, how can you then, figure out what the student, is coming to you with, and how to anchor the new kinds of ideas, in their, their minds, so they can actually move forward. So in the context that we are in now, well, we're thinking we have students who, whatever point they're at, they still don't have the knowledge they are going to need to cross that bridge and get to where they need to go with research. So whether they're undergraduate students who are assigned research projects to collect some data or to do some kind of archival or online research as a part of a class project, or they're a doctoral student who is trying to figure out how to move forward with the dissertation.
So I guess the question then, Janet, is how do you assess where they are to begin with? So you're trying to build a bridge, but a bridge from where to where?
Okay, so move on to that. So again, another kind of set of ideas that I started with way back when, and education folks in the education field are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, which I think is kind of the Swiss Army knife of education. Sort of fits with so many things that we need to do, and it's a kind of a conceptual framework that has these kind of progressively more complex levels where we are starting with at the very basic level, and I'm using here the revised taxonomy that was put together in 2000. So at the bottom, at the basic level, we have the level of remember. So here we need to know the terminology. Who are the big thinkers? What's going on? With this topic. And this is not a linear model. I mean, really, and no matter who we are and how sophisticated we are, if we're starting something new, we've got to start by finding out, what's the language that's used, what are the ideas that people are talking about, what are the world views they're expressing, what's going on with it, I mean, I took a watercolor class this fall. Well, I had to start, at the beginning, to find out, because this is something new to me. So that's what, remember is just those the very basic terms. Then, do I understand this enough to actually use these ideas? And then can I apply them in something that I want to do or that I need to do? Can I then go to the next level and actually analyze? I know enough about it that I can analyze and start to, take it apart and really look at it in more depth. Then, can I evaluate it? Can I actually make a judgment? Is it, does it meet quality standards? What kind of criteria would I even use to evaluate whatever it is, whether it's literature or whether it's a social problem or a research need? And then finally, to create, well, can I now do something original? Can I come up with my own interpretation? Can I come up with a new solution to this problem? What can I do with what I've learned? So using this kind of framework, then I started to think about, well, how might that framework be used to think about research methods, resources? And, having worked, as Bronia was saying, with students for many, many years, we know one thing: everyone is in a hurry. Both on our side, we need time-efficient approaches, and on the student side, they want to get right to whatever it is they need to find. So if a student is coming to me with a need to, either venture into a new area or to start something from scratch, then, I can think, well, what kinds of resources are going to provide those fundamentals in a way that will be inviting to them, that will be encouraging. It's not going to make them just immediately give up because they think, I'll never get this. I don't know what these people are talking about. So, how can I, help them start there? Or, if someone is coming at a more sophisticated level, what might they need? So if someone comes in and they're at the point where they're trying to do something like a literature review, well, that's really an evaluation task. So, what might they need at that stage? So one of the other things that I really liked about this revision that was done to the original 1950s Bloom's taxonomy is that they also kind of teased out different kinds of knowledge. And I think that framework also is really helpful with the kind of, question that we are grappling with in our session here. So, even, at any one of those levels that someone might be, what kind of resource do they need? Do they need something that is going to be factual. It's just going to tell them, okay, there are 5 kinds of ethnography, and here are the, here's what they are. Or are they looking for theories? Are they looking for the conceptual basis for those kinds of things? Or do they need something how-to? I need to go interview people. I need to know how to do that. So, am I looking for the practical stuff? And then, am I, at the point where I'm really looking more strategically? How does this kind of research fit into the bigger world? How does big data type of research compare to, say, a qualitative study in terms of how it might impact the field? So I'm really, looking at those, and also my role. Who am I as a researcher, and what do I bring to this, either in terms of biases or experience that will make this a richer kind of thing. So, depending on where someone is coming from, I think, by using this kind of strategy, perhaps you can more quickly and more precisely and to the benefit of the student, find the right kinds of resources. So using the kind of framework I was just talking about, at the factual level, it might just be, what is case study methodology? And case study is a particularly challenging one because the word case study, means many different things. So that might make it even, more confusing for a student. So do they need just that kind of factual information? Or, at the conceptual level, question could be, well, what theories could underpin a case study in my field? Then in the procedural level, it might be, well, how do I design a case study, or how do I conduct a case study? So they want, they don't want to wade through a whole bunch of theories. They want to say, what do I do next? What are the steps? Lay it out for me. And then, at the metacognitive level, what kind of scholarly contribution can I make with the case study? Is it considered legitimate in my field? Is it something that's going to be credible? If that's what I choose to do, am I going to get the kind of career opportunities that I want to get with my research? So, those kind of bigger questions.
So, moving this on from the more abstract and into some of these practical questions about what does this actually mean, and what types of resources would you actually want to assign to a student? And what we wanted to talk about in particular was video. So obviously Sage has moved into video publishing in a really big way. We're investing really heavily in video publishing because we think it's a really great way to meet students where they are at by providing these video resources. If you're interested at all in how to engage students with video and how video is being used in the classroom, we have a really interesting white paper that Sage just published this week, and we have copies of that available on the booth if you're interested. But let's move on to why one might want to suggest videos for your students.
So I think, probably one of the reasons why Sage has gone in this direction is that, we're seeing a change really in our time from things being focused on the written word to the using audio, visuals, and other kinds of graphics to communicate. And young people especially are accustomed to communicating that way. Now that we have cameras, video cameras, sophisticated communications, in our pockets, that we can take pictures and share them immediately. I think that has really encouraged people to think about ways that we communicate visually. So, videos are a way that, perhaps can reach people. I also think that having, as I say, working with students for a long time who are perplexed, to put it mildly, about how to proceed with research and what it really means to be a researcher, it's hard. And you can have a whole stack of books. They all look at a different kind of angle of this big process. But having someone just explain it to you can sometimes be a little bit more encouraging and kind of welcoming to the student. So I particularly like the research of Gunter Kress, and he's done a lot of more recent research about kind of multimodal communications and multimodal literacies and that sort of thing, which I think are really important for us to understand. And clearly, even more research is needed on that. But I just particularly like this quote that, the world told is different than the world shown. Where all of, think this conference, everyone could have just connected online, and I'm a big online person, so I'm totally in favor of that. But there's some reason why they're here walking around, talking to people, looking at them, looking at the stuff. There is something that we get that is different. So then, kind of, to follow with the analogy of using the blooms, I went through the list of the SAGE videos that, are now available and tried to think, well, how might I, if I'm trying to walk the talk that I was just describing, how might I find the kinds of videos that would be the right ones to suggest to someone at a particular point in their process. And so this is just, kind of as an example. So, when we're looking at the titles that are available, things like, what are the practical steps for doing a research project, and the things that are titled core skills for new researchers. Well, that, kind of tips us off that, those might be things that will be helpful for new researchers, but even within those titles, trying to look at, what might be the ones that are really explaining the most fundamental concepts in a way that would be inviting to students, and then going up, into, some of the other levels, thinking about, what might be helpful to someone at that, who comes to me with a question that I would assess as being, at that stage. Someone who is, at the very beginning, they're probably going to need that kind of factual material that is at that basic sort of remember and understand level. In terms of the procedural, the kinds of things that really tell you, how to apply the ideas, what steps I should take, that, kind of puts it into something that I can adopt as a strategy to use, so at this point I might just be overwhelmed by, something more than that. But, if I have something that tells me, okay, a case study research, there are, 4 big stages of this process, and here are the main activities at each stage, then, that might help me to think through it. And then, even, so say, what the kinds of videos that might be appropriate for that. I just, listed one, but, something that's like, well, what are the steps, that will actually lay it out in a clear way. So then, someone at this kind of level, well, they're really asking you a question that is more conceptual, and they are at a point where they're trying to analyze and evaluate in order to make a choice. So, they need to have information that will help them clearly compare, what are the pros and cons for each method. I don't at this point want, everything there is to know about any one of these approaches, but I want to know, what it means and what it would mean for me as a researcher to conduct that. So, what kinds of resources would help to, kind of target into that kind of a dilemma. So it's methodspace.com. Right now I'm doing a series about SAGE research methods with a free access to it that also includes this model with live links to the videos, and so you can go in and look at these videos and the entire video collection and get a sense of what they're like and whether they would fit the needs that your students have who are at various stages of research readiness. But we'd like to open it up if you have any questions or thoughts. Does this idea make sense to you? Do you think that it would be helpful to you in answering students' questions and helping them to connect to resources?
And the best thing you can do in order to drive your research process is to be extremely curious, almost a passionate curiosity. I love this quote by Albert Einstein. He says, "I have no special talents. I am only..."
I think, this opening, starting at this point, this is, I think, a really good example of the, kind of meeting the student who's thinking like, I don't know, I'm not a researcher, I'm just, a student, I don't know, but I'm curious. I mean, that's someplace she started, to connect with, that's not intimidating, it's not using language or terminology that, a common person wouldn't know. So I think it illustrates that point.
Archival data is spread out all over the country. If you're studying Congress, for instance, the papers of individual members of Congress are in each of their congressional districts. So everywhere from Alaska to Florida, you'll find these resources. They're oftentimes held at universities. Most universities have special collections or an archives department where you can probably find some archival resources that will be good for your research.
So with this one, we chose it because this would be an example of something that, it's not a beginner level. This would be for someone who is, trying to perhaps evaluate different data collection options and what might be involved. So, that gives, a little more in-depth for archival research.
Maybe have it open. Yeah, there we go. So please go and check out Method Space and see what kind of resources are on there. And Janet will be talking you through on Method Space this research readiness. And you can see here that it's Janet has mapped the Bloom's taxonomy to some of the SAGE videos, and you can get access to those videos. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more. Any last words there, Janet, before we wrap up?
Well, I hope that those here and those watching this recording will find these ideas useful, because I think, research is really exciting, but that's not the way that it may appear to someone who is either starting at the beginning or at a really high pressure point for making big decisions that, really might change the whole trajectory of their careers. So, I hope that these are kind of useful frameworks to think through and apply in the work that you do.